Yeah, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. You mentioned there a phrase which I thought was extremely important. You said we need a coalition of opposition. And as I said in my introduction, the breadth of this platform, I think, is an example of that kind of thing, and that is what's needed. My next speaker is Pippa Bartolotti, who is the leader of the Green Party in Wales, and we were talking as we were coming up the stairs, that the last time we met was outside the National Assembly building in Cardiff, when we were holding banners protesting at the Welsh Government's setting of its budget, because we've been calling for the Welsh Government not to set a budget in Wales, to actually make a stand. And we're very pleased indeed to see Pippa alongside us there. So
it was cold too, I remember that.
It was cold but sunny. It was cold but sunny. I think, you know, more of this sort of thing is what we need. Exactly what you were saying, Catherine. This coalition of opposition that we need to be looking to build, as they have successfully done in Greece. So, without further ado, over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Well, golly spare! Well, exciting, isn't it?
Very.
Oh my goodness, that election, yes. Syriza won, austerity 0-1. I think so many people were happy with that result. Just a couple more seats would have sunk it completely, but we are where we are, and strange bedfellows do appear at times like this. But it's not just the left who are rejoicing, of course. Lots of people are rejoicing about this particular result. And you've got to remember that even Golden Dawn votes went to Syriza, quite a few of them in the end, because austerity is a common enemy. It's, whatever your ideology, if you're going hungry, if you've got nowhere to sleep, and if you haven't got a job, and you're worrying every day about the food you're going to put on your table, it really doesn't matter your ideology, you're suffering. Austerity is a common enemy. So we've been out visiting and supporting Syriza for many months, in fact years actually. Romain Phoenix, who's our trade union representative on GPEX, has been out to Greece a couple of times supporting them at the last election as well as this one, and other Greens have been going out. We gave them our full, unequivocal support some time ago. And I've got family out in Greece. They make equipment for disabled people. There's plenty of work, but no one can pay. So they're in the same boat as everyone else. They can't even buy materials to make the things they need in order to help disabled people. It is dire out there. So what's it about? It's money and banks and greed. That's what it boils down to. I mean, what kind of morality pushes a nation to the point where only half of its young people have had a job? How is that supportable? How can the profit motive be so important that you will push a whole generation to the wall? And of course the independent Greeks are strange bedfellows, as I said earlier. Well, there is a common short-term goal. Realigning this debt is a top priority, and interestingly enough, there is a precedent. In 1953, Germany needed its debt realigned. In fact, its debt was halved. Plus, it didn't have to pay any interest until its export surplus was more than 3%. So it's happened before, and it happened to Germany. So who is Angela Merkel to push the hard times on the Greeks when Germany itself has had a get-out-of-jail-free card, pretty much? I think at the time they called it the German economic miracle. It wasn't. It was a restructuring of the debt to what I think was a very reasonable level, and I think the Greeks can expect to have the very least the same. So debt forgiveness is on the table. And when you lend money, if you're lending it to someone who has not a cat in hell's chance of paying it back, well, you either don't lend in the first place, or you just write it off. And the crash of 2008-9 was caused in great part, by lending mortgages to people who didn't have a cat in hell's chance of paying it back. But it didn't matter to the financiers that these people couldn't pay it back, because these days, debt, toxic or not, can be bagged up and sold on. Now, in Greece's case, some of these people who bought the toxic debt are what we call vulture capitalists. They'll buy it at a knockdown rate, and they will pursue Greece all over the world to get that money back, and they won't relent, they won't write any off, and they won't reduce it. They did it to Argentina. Okay, and I can name names involved in the Greek debt. Where are they? Dart Management, residing, would you believe, in the Cayman Islands. Elliott Associates, vultures and tax dodgers. The IMF and the ECB knew Greece would never be able to pay that debt back. And in fact, of course, the debt is higher now than it was 5 years ago. Some of us remember what they called the third world debt. The same situation, where the interest rates and the repayments were costing more, or costing the country more than it could possibly earn in exports. History keeps going round and round until we can stop these people in their tracks. But the thing about the British vulture funds is that they're supported entirely by the British government. And the British government supported them by voting not to decrease the debt to Greece. The UK is no part of it. The other European nations were part of the last round of restructuring, but the UK wasn't. Us, our country, the people, perhaps not many of you voted for, but they're the ones. And it really doesn't matter if they're Labour or if they're Tory, because the result is exactly the same. Behind closed doors, these vulture capitalists are being supported at a governmental level. I find this completely intolerable. So we've got these unscrupulous people. We need to change the law. It wouldn't take much. And of course, banking needs to be reformed on many, many levels, not just the great promise of separating retail banks from the casino banks, which never happened, by the way. Not just a Robin Hood tax, which is small tax on financial transactions, which all of Europe has voted through, but the UK has not. It's not just about sovereign money, and that is taking the manufacture of money away from banks and keeping it in a democratically owned People's Bank. I'd like to see a People's Bank of Wales, and I have been talking to people about how we would construct this. So, well, what have we got? Well, first of all, we've got a Green Party manifesto, and I've just copied a bit of the draft financial part, the parts on monetary reform, which I haven't emailed to everyone. I just printed out one copy, but you could have that if you want. We've got choices coming up in this election. We can carry on voting for more of the same. Okay, that's your choice. More of the same, or maybe take a plunge into the unknown and start voting for something different. Taking the risk, not worrying that actually it might get a little bit worse before it gets better. Because, let's face it, I can't see either Tory, Labour or Lib Dem making anything better for anyone. They're all committed to austerity. Greens aren't. Greens are an anti-austerity party. Always have been. So, what's it going to be? Anti-austerity. Solving the problems. Yes. And remember, the problems that we've got aren't just financial. They're not just austerity. 50 communities in Wales alone are going to be abandoned to the rising sea levels. The coastal reports are there, you can read them. I'm not naming names. 50 communities are being abandoned, and there is absolutely no compensation for those householders. This is the other fight that we've got, which is quite literally lapping at our feet. We have to be concerned about what we're doing on a global level. Austerity is part of it, and a huge part of it. And in the Green Party, we know that people who are worrying about where the next meal is coming from are not people who are going to be worrying about climate change. Because how can they? We don't expect them to. We have to get the social and economic justice right, justice at the same time as the environmental justice. So it's working on every front, but we're used to doing that. We want to help those people in Wales who are going to watch the tide come in and never go out again. We want to help people everywhere who are suffering from the effects of climate change, because remember, climate refugees have no legal status. Bangladesh is very low. The tide is coming in and not going out. Who is going to help those people? The islands of Tuvalu are all but abandoned. They've been given some land by the island of New Zealand to help them. Many islands are going to disappear, sadly, even in my lifetime. The low-lying nations are copying it. The Nile Delta is salinated. It cannot grow the crops it used to grow. So we have this rather large fight on our hands between the kind of casino capitalism, the foul vulture capitalism that is causing profit motive to be above any other motive, any chance of humanity, any chance of looking after each other. All this is abandoned for the profit motive. And it's not sustainable, as we all know, but nobody is doing anything about it. And over 40 years, Greens have charted the course to do something about it. Global warming is here, climate change is here, we're on course to exceed 2 degrees, we're on course for rather a large problem. Half the world's species have gone, and you may not know that 95% of the mammals on this planet are humans and the animals they breed to eat. We are destroying the system, and we are destroying the diversity, and we don't even know what we're destroying. So let's not destroy each other as well. Let's stick together. Let's make this election, and there's not much time left, but let's make this election one to remember. And in Wales, we've got another one next year, which will be something even more momentous to remember, because we've got to shake up Cardiff Bay. If we want it to act for the people, we've got to get out and get rid of them. Thank you very much, Diolch.
Thank you very much, Pippa. As you indicated, I think, you know, areas like Wales, poorer parts of the UK, suffer more from the effects of austerity than the wealthier parts. And I mean, the example of the environmental effect of capitalism in Wales is going to be very severely felt. So I think, and as Pippa says, it's not a battle on one front, is it? It's a battle on several fronts. But they are all interconnected.
Indeed they are.
They're all interconnected.